Quilting is so exciting. There's fabric and patterns and choices and designing and just so much to choose from. And when we pull the components together and start building our quilt and we have an idea of what it's going to be, maybe, maybe not. Sometimes it's a complete surprise, and those are the best surprises. And that's what I want to talk to you today about. How can we jazz up those quilts and change them into something different than what maybe we ordinarily do? I'm Louise from Inspired Quilting by Louise, and I love color, and I love color in my quilt, and I love combining colors, especially when I'm combining fat quarters. Those are my favorite. But I have a quilt today to share with you, my Confetti Quilt. It's one that I've recently designed, and I'm so excited to share it. It's made with charm squares, but of course you can use scrap fabrics, you can use the charm squares, you can use fat quarters, you can use layer cakes. Oh my goodness, there is just so much that you can do with this. But beyond the fabric, there's also color and color placement and using accents. Oh, this is going to be so exciting. I'm anxious to show you this quilt and share my ideas with you. And there's also a surprise. This quilt is going to be released at the same time that this video is. So you can get this pattern at a discount. The link is below, plus I'll put it up above. But I'd love for you to take a look at this and see what you think. And if you want more, I can tell you exactly where you can find it. But right now, let's go ahead and get started. I'm anxious to show you this quilt. Here's my Confetti quilt, and I love it. It's such a fun quilt, and I love all the colors. This is the large baby size. It actually comes in 4 different sizes in the pattern, and it's so easy to make. The best part is how quickly this goes together. And there's so much you can do just in the way you select the colors. So I want to show you how to make this today, and I'm excited to tell you about my course for this quilt. It's an online course with tons of videos, and this quilt comes in 4 sizes and showing you how to do different layouts with different color schemes, and there's just so much included. I really hope you'll take a look at the class. And of course, there's a discount in here for you, so don't miss it. I'll put the link up above as well as down below in the description. Right now, though, I want to show you the basics of putting this together, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. Let the fun begin. We have fabric and a quilt pattern, and I am excited. I need 29 patch blocks, and I'm going to, in each block, have a primary accent color. I'm going to have some low volume background on this side, and then I'm going to have some bold batiks as the focal fabrics. Now, I went through my charm box and I pulled a few pieces out. I really didn't have a lot that I can use for this. Now, that's where these came from. These are charms from another quilt, so I can definitely use that. And, you know, I thought would be fun. Let me just show you this first. So then I have these blues. So my idea is the background is going to be low volume and light blues instead of all low volume. This way we're going to get a little more color into the quilt, and the pattern's not going to be quite so distinctive. It's going to be more about the color and the sporadic placements. All right, back on track. Low volume, I got some extra because these were bright and bold and I like the colors. This is the fabric I'm going to use for the focal fabric. There are 20 pieces and I need a total of 80. So if I cut 4 out of each, I'll have plenty. And I have some extras here, so I'm good there. And then I thought if I'm doing sort of a low volume background and light blues, this may or may not work. I'm not sure if that's too dark, but I think it'd be fun. I saw this and I thought, oh my gosh, this would be so perfect in the corners. But I only had 19 of them and I need 20 for 20 blocks. So I thought, okay, what are my options? I went through my charm box. I didn't see any more. But then when I set this here, I'm going, okay, I bet I have fabric somewhere. And I found it. Look at that, right in the box where I thought it would be. And I put it here, and it's like, this is all just too much the same. I may put some of these, you know, in here for the background, but I'm not going to use this for the accent block in the center of the 9 patch. Instead, I'm going to use one of these. Oh my goodness, how wonderful. And I think I have to go with this one because that brings in all the colors there. This is fun, but the background is a bit too dull. I really want to go with that hot pink. The blue would look nice because the blue would really accent the low volume background, but it just focuses on the blue. And I'm not sure if I want to do that or if I really want to go with all the colors. But it's spring, summer's coming, that tropical weather, the tropical feel. So we're just going to go with a tropical color palette. How is that? So I'm going to cut my fat quarters here. Like I said, there's 20 of them. And I will get a total of 80. And then I have a few extra. I always like to have extra so as I'm putting my blocks together, then I can mix and match and not duplicate. So at the end I have extras. And this is going to be the start of my low volume pile. And I may pull some more out of here. I haven't decided yet, but I kind of like these blues. These blues, like I said, will come over here. Here's my accent strip. I think that's going to be too dark to go into the background. If I need more, I have some good ones in here that will be kind of fun. Here's a blue one with a bit of olive. I like that one. Kind of going in that same colorway. This is sort of blue with a bit of green in it. After going through my pile of low volume charms, I found quite a few that I like, and they're mostly in the creamy to beigey backgrounds with blue and purples are fine because that's really going to be a dominant color. This is the Art Gallery Fabric Vert. I love this. It's one of my favorites. And of course, purple dots. This works well because it has gray, as does this. Gray really works well with blues. And we have some more of these. Then I found a beigey color. Oh, we got plenty of these dots. We may use a bunch of those. So here's some more sort of creamy, almost a greenish color, which I think will work great. And then I have these. And I may pull some of these dots in because that color is going to work really well since I took out those darker blues. And then, of course, we've got our center. So every block will have this in the center. This is the accent. This is going to be the confetti. And with all the little pieces in there, each confetti, while it'll have the pink background, will have different colors. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So my task now is to get everything cut. I'll pull my fat quarters. Again, we have 20 of these, and they're just these beautiful batiks. I think they're from, Timeless Treasures, and they're just gorgeous. They're very intense, saturated colors, which are perfect. So basically, we're going with a tropical color scheme. We've got bright and bold, and this works in perfectly. Blue is a wonderful offset accent piece, and not accent, complementary piece that'll work well in the background. Plus, we have lots of beiges to mix in. So this particular version of the confetti quilt is not going to have the dominant pattern as visible as some of the others. This is going to be more all over, and that's because of these choices right here. The background fabrics are going to have some blues, which will bring out a lot of the blues over here. It's going to have some beiges and some grays. There's some purples and some tans, and that's going to work on all this. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I love the fabric so far, so I know it'll be beautiful. So let me go ahead and get these cut. I need a total of 80 of these fabrics. I need a total of 20 of these and 80 here. So I'll get everything counted out, and when I get back, we'll start putting this together, and I'll show you where we're going with it all. I have all the blocks cut, and now I have my layout. And so as I'm sewing my patch, my 9 patch together, I can just take off the top row and sew that block, do the next one, and that way my colors should pretty much be dispersed. So I'll go ahead and press them, and then I'll sew these rows together to create the block. Then we're going to cross cut this because this technically is a disappearing 9 patch, but that's when the fun happens and we do the layout. So let me go ahead and get all this put together and I'll show you how that goes. Our blocks are starting to come together. You can see these 2 were sewn. These are 2 9 patches right here. The first 2 rows were sewn. The second 2 rows, they're chain stitched, so there's stitching right here connecting them. Now what I'm going to do, because this is already sewn with the chain stitching, I'm just going to take this and fold it over. So I will cut this apart right here so we can separate our blocks. I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to turn this over. And what I want to show you is the importance of nesting your seam. I'm going to repeat myself probably multiple times, but it really is important. So you know that the outer pieces, the outer rows, are going to be pressed to the outside. These are going to be pressed to the inside. Hopefully a little better than I did, but finger pressing is okay at this point. A lot of times I won't go through and press the entire block until it's sewn together. I did do these initially just so I could show you and you could see which way the seams will go. So I just pick this up, and let's say I'm going to start up here. I'm going to line these seams up. Now I do not start at this corner. I start here with this seam, and I make sure that it lines up perfectly. Now I also want you to take a look. I need to separate these so you can see inside the seam. And I don't trust myself trying to cut that with the rotary blade in my hand like that. It's pretty close quarters. All right, so I line them up, and when I feel them side by side, if you separate it and then put your fingers across there, you feel that gully, right? There's a crevice in there between the 2 seams. We don't want that. We want them touching. And then once you know it feels right, you take a look and you can see how these are lining up perfectly. And that is what's going to give you your nice straight corners. So we'll do that. We're going to start sewing at the top. We'll come down. So as I'm stitching, I hold this in place until I get right up to near the presser foot, so I know it's not going to bounce around, and I'll just feed it in. Then I'll stop. And I'll go ahead and take a look here and get this one set up. Now, if it's easier for you to pin this instead of just holding it between your thumb and finger, you can certainly do that. Whatever works for you. That's the whole idea, is you want to be as comfortable as you can when you're sewing. And this is what we want. We want that seam to line up nice and pretty. Oops, a little thread in there. No extra charge. But we want these corners to match up really nice. So once we get this done, we get those connected, this is what our block will look like. Oh, you know what? I did this out of order. Here's the first block. But you knew what that looked like. No surprises, right? And then here are the finished blocks. I have a bunch of them. Out of 20, what was that, 3 or 4 of them there? So most of them are finished. And what we're going to do is cut these. But I just want you to see how different everyone is going to look. And using lots of variety in your fabric just creates so much interest. Okay, do you see? This is the one I was looking for. I had set this block aside because I made a mistake. And I wanted to fix it. But then I couldn't find it because everything had gotten piled up and put away, and I didn't know where it was. So take a look. Do you see anything? I'm going to make it easy for you. This is what the fabric should look like, and this is what it looks like upside down from the back. But you know what? I'm not going to go through and cut all that out because it's okay. This quilt has lots of different fabrics, lots of colors. Something like this is not going to stand out. You can still see the little pattern coming through, but I just thought that was funny. I wanted to show it to you and say, hey, if you can get away with it, if it's not, going to keep you up late at night, then go ahead and just let it go. Don't sweat the small stuff. If you've got good looking corners, that's what really draws the eye. Now we're going to cut our blocks into quarters. I just think it's a fun way to quilt by making a larger block, cutting it down, repiecing it, and you just get so much more interest that way. And that's how we're doing this. Of course, this is officially, technically, whatever that word is, a disappearing 9-patch, but we're just taking it to a new level, and that's kind of fun. So you can see I'm just cutting it down the middle in both directions. I lined this up. This is 4.5 inches after the seam allowance. So I'm going to measure this side up at 2 1/4. I'm going to put my second ruler here to make sure I'm getting my 2 1/4. And if for any reason you don't, split the difference. If one side is too big, too small, just adjust it so that they're both about the same. Sometimes, depending on your seam allowance, you may find that your what am I trying to say? That your block could be a little bit larger or smaller, and that's just a personal method of your quilting and your accuracy and how you sew, where your needles set, all those things. There's a lot of factors. And if it's something that you struggle with and you want to change that, then, there are things that you can do and practice sewing straight lines. That really works very well, is getting yourself set on that 1/4 inch, because once you've got that embedded in your brain, you're going to do really well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the blocks together. All 20 of my 9-patch blocks have been cut down, and I've separated them into 4 groups. Every block should measure 7 inches in both directions, and we are looking really good right here. Now, we want to go ahead and set things up in order to assemble our blocks. The reason I do it this way is, again, as I'm sitting down, I can just power through it, take off what's on top, and just go through until they're all finished. Now, we're going to rotate these because, again, this is a disappearing 9-patch. That means it's a 9-patch that we cut and then manipulate in some manner for a new pattern. So I want to make sure I'm starting with everything in the right position. The reason that's important is I'm going to set this block up exactly in the position I'm going to sew it. So I want to make sure that all these blocks are in the right place, all the confetti blocks, because those are the ones that sort of define the pattern that we're creating. Now, the way we do this is rotate these. And it's a very simple method, and it just makes such a great pattern, and I love the design. The key to this pattern is this center block. This is what makes the confetti. This is what creates that extra splash of color consistently throughout the quilt, and this is the part that I love about it. So here we are. We have our block number 1, and then the first block we're going to turn just like this. So we have our first block stays stationary. The second one we rotate to the right once. This we rotate to the right twice. And this one 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. So now this is how we get our pattern. And everything is laid out well. We have exactly what we need where we want it. And all I have to do is set these next to me at the sewing machine, which I do this at the on my ironing board. I lower my ironing board so it's level with my table. I can just set these aside over there and pick them up and grab them as I need them. But then it's also easy for me to step away because it's set on the ironing board and it doesn't get disrupted. And that just works really well. So let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to chain stitch. I'm going to do row 1 and then 2. Then row 1 and row 2. So every block is together as I'm sewing. And that way, all I have to do is come back and cut them apart, do the last seam, and we're good. So we're going to chain stitch, which means we're going to take this piece, sew it this way, this piece, not without stopping, but without cutting in between, and come this way. The beauty is that we're not going to have a lot of seams to have to deal with. I did some quick sewing and I started putting my blocks together. So what I did is, with the 4 blocks we had laid out all stacked up, I worked off the top of the pile. So I have number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I did 1 and 2 together and 3 and 4 together, and I just chain stitch. Don't have to worry about matching any seams. Just make sure that your seam allowance doesn't get flipped or go the wrong direction. That just can make things messy. So I went through and I just sewed up a bunch of these, and then what I do is I come back and cut apart the pairs, because I want to keep both sets of blocks together, because I know that's one full block together. So it's really important that I don't cut everything apart, because then I have to go back and figure out, well, which goes with which is the top, which is the bottom, what colors go well. So with that being said, now that I have my pairs, I just fold these over and I sew them. And the important thing here is that seam allowance, and you want to line these up really well. And I'll go ahead now and cut this, because I know these two go together. But go ahead and there we go. Line these up. I want you to be able to see, and you see how nice that line is right there. We want those seams to line up exactly. So we'll put a pin in right here and go all the way to the other end, line these two up, sew down the 1/4 inch seam, come here, sew the 1/4 inch seam, make sure they're nested, that the seam allowances are going in separate directions, and then come all the way to the end. And then your block is finished. And I have some of those here too, because I also chain stitch the blocks as I make them. So here's a pair of blocks, and I sewed those, and I just went in and did a second. So I chain piece everything. It just works so much easier. And keep your directions consistent, working from the same position on each block. If the top is up and the bottom is down, just keep them all that way, because it's going to make it so much easier when you have to go back and press everything out, and when you're assembling your block, because if they are in different directions, it makes it tough lining your piece up on the other end. Now, when we press these, I think I have some pressed over here maybe. Let me see. Oh, look at all these. See, these are all the ones I have done. Well, I guess I didn't have a pressed one for you. So let's use this and I'll show you. So what we're going to do is, these blocks are already pressed. We have our seam allowance right here that shows us which way the seam allowance is going to go. Now, for right this moment, I'm just going to finger press these. And maybe I did. This doesn't look like it's out of whack at all. Now, what I will do here, though, I press these in the direction they need to go. This seam that joins the two, I will set the seam with a warm or a hot iron, just so that it keeps everything nice and straight and smooth. So when I go to finish it off, to do the final quilting, or excuse me, the final sewing of the blocks, and then to do the final pressing, it just comes out nicer if this seam is set first. And that just means it helps the thread embed down into the fabric. And then we're good. And then we start putting it together. Let me show you how that works. You can see how the blocks are going together. Here's one block right here, and here's the second block. You can see how these are pressed nice and smooth, nice and flat. And then this seam is the one that I didn't press initially, because notice over here, these seams are pressed the same direction, but these go in opposing directions, because when I join these blocks, I need to nest those seams. So that's why I don't press these seams until we're finished. And that's the same right here. This is a 4-patch, and you can certainly make a little 4-patch. It's an easy quick project if you just want to make something small and, just a little decoration, a wall hanging, something to put on the table, a little occasional table, just something fun. And then you can add on more, which is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to have a total of 20 blocks on this one. And so I will go ahead and piece everything just like I did here, and I'm not going to press this until everything is attached. Then once everything is sewn together, I know which way the seams go. So let me go ahead and get this quilt finished now that you've seen how it all goes together and what we need to do to get there. And I can't wait to show you. We're getting really close. Here's my finished confetti quilt. It looks awesome. Those colors are bright and beautiful, and they just stand out so well. And even with all the extra blue in the background, I think it looks wonderful. That color just really adds a lot across the quilt and brings out the tones of blue and all the different blocks. It's so pretty. And look at those wonderful little pink confetti squares floating across the quilt. That's a lot of fun. This is actually quite a playful quilt. I hope you love it. I hope you get a chance to make it. Oh, and I hope you sign up for the course that I have. I'm really excited about it. Have fun making your quilt. As always, it's a pleasure having you here today. Have a wonderful rest of your day.